I spent 12 years eating cold canned beans in a basement, believing I was too dangerous to live upstairs with normal people. My stepmother Vera told me every day that I was mentally disturbed, that the world wasn't safe for someone like me. She said I had blackouts where I'd hurt people without remembering, that doctors confirmed I was unstable after my parents died. But the real shock came when I escaped at 18 and discovered she'd been collecting checks from my dead mother's estate the entire time, $20,000 a month for 12 years, all while the world thought I was dead. My name is Dustin Calloway, and 3 months ago, I was nothing more than a ghost living under the floorboards of a woman who called herself my protector. Vera Hutchins married my father when I was 6 years old, just 2 weeks before he died in a car accident alongside my birth mother. She became my guardian by default, the only family I had left, or so she told me. She had this way of speaking that made everything sound like medical fact. Your condition requires isolation, Dustin. The episodes are getting worse. You nearly killed a neighbor's cat last week, don't you remember? I never remembered, but why would she lie? The basement where she kept me had exactly 87 concrete blocks on the north wall. I counted them every morning for 12 years. Like a prayer or a punishment, I was never sure which. There was a small window near the ceiling, painted black from the outside, that let in just enough light to know whether it was day or night. Vera installed a chemical toilet in the corner that she'd empty once a week, always wearing thick rubber gloves like I was contaminated. A rusty sink dripped constantly, 27 drops per minute. I know because I counted those too. She'd bring meals once a day, always the same rotation. Monday was canned beans and white bread. Tuesday was soup I suspected came from a shelter. Wednesday was peanut butter sandwiches. Thursday was beans again. Friday was what she called treat day, which meant the sandwich might have jelly. Weekends were random leftovers from whatever she ate upstairs. I learned to savor every bite, even when the bread was moldy, because hunger was the only feeling that reminded me I was still alive. "You're lucky I don't send you to an institution," Vera would say, setting down the tray just inside the door. She never came more than 3 feet into the basement. "Do you know what they do to violent cases like you in those places? Electroshock therapy, straitjackets, medications that turn your brain to mush. But I protect you, Dustin. I keep you safe down here where you can't hurt anyone and no one can hurt you." The lies were so perfectly crafted that I believed them completely. She showed me forged medical reports from a Dr. Brennan, who supposedly evaluated me monthly without ever seeing me. The reports described violent episodes I couldn't remember, deteriorating mental capacity, and recommendations for continued isolation. She even created fake letters from concerned neighbors thanking her for handling my situation so discreetly. Mrs. Henderson from 2 houses down wrote again, she'd tell me. She says she still has nightmares about finding you standing in her garden that night, holding that knife. You really don't remember? I'd shake my head, terrified of myself, grateful for the locked door between me and the world. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering what kind of monster lived inside me, what darkness took over when my mind went black. I'd study my hands in the dim light, looking for evidence of violence, finding only the cuts and bruises from living in concrete and shadows. The basement became my entire universe, 20 feet by 15 feet of damp concrete and despair. I did push-ups on the cold floor until my arms gave out, just to feel something other than emptiness. I traced letters in the dust, teaching myself to write from old textbooks she threw down sometime in my first year. They were from the 1980s, outdated and water-damaged, but they became my teachers, my friends, my escape. I read about American history that ended before I was born, learned math that stopped at basic algebra, studied science from books that still called Pluto a planet. When I heard voices from the neighborhood through the thin walls, Vera would crank up an old radio that only picked up static and one evangelical station. "The Hutchins boy? Oh, he's at a special facility upstate," I heard her tell someone during a summer barbecue. The smell of grilling meat drifted through the painted window, and I pressed my face against the wall just to imagine what normal felt like. Poor thing never recovered from losing his parents. We visit when we can, but the doctors say familiar faces might trigger another episode. She was so convincing that sometimes I caught myself feeling grateful. At least I wasn't in a facility. At least I had books. At least she didn't let me hurt anyone during my blackouts. The Stockholm Syndrome was so complete that I'd apologize when the toilet overflowed, when I got sick from spoiled food, when I grew too tall for the children's clothes she'd occasionally throw down. But everything, every single carefully constructed lie, started to crumble the morning of my 18th birthday. That's when Vera made her first mistake. That's when she got greedy. That's when I learned that the real monster in that house had never been locked in the basement at all. My name is Dustin Calloway, and until 3 months ago I believed I was mentally dangerous. Not violent exactly, but Vera said I had episodes where I'd black out and hurt people without remembering. She said the doctors confirmed it after my parents died in that car crash when I was 6. The way she explained it made perfect medical sense. Post-traumatic psychiatric disorder with dissociative episodes, she'd read from official-looking papers. Patient exhibits extreme danger to himself and others during blackout states. Indefinite supervised isolation recommended. Vera married my father just 2 weeks before the accident. She always reminded me how generous she was, taking in a disturbed child who wasn't even hers. Most people would have sent you to an institution, Dustin, she'd say, bringing down my daily meal of canned food and crackers. But I keep you safe down here, away from people you might hurt. You should be grateful. The state wanted to lock you in a maximum security psychiatric ward after what you did to that teacher. What teacher? I had no memory of any teacher, but the police report she showed me described in detail how 6-year-old Dustin Calloway had attacked Mrs. Peterson with scissors during a grief counseling session. The report was stamped, signed, official. How could I argue with evidence I couldn't remember? The basement wasn't completely dark. There was that small window near the ceiling, painted black from the outside, that let in just enough light to distinguish day from night. Vera had installed a toilet and sink in the corner. Some old textbooks from the 1980s she said were good enough for someone in your condition, and a mattress on the floor that smelled permanently of mildew. She'd come down once a day with food, always locking the heavy door behind her. The lock would click 3 times. Click, click, click. That sound became the rhythm of my imprisonment. I taught myself to read from those old books. Math, basic science, history that ended around 1985. The pages were yellowed and torn, but they became my only connection to education. I memorized entire chapters about the Revolutionary War, solved the same geometry problems hundreds of times, read about planets and atoms and cells until I could recite passages word for word. When neighbors' voices drifted through the walls during summer barbecues, Vera would turn on the old radio to drown them out. Static and sermons, that's all it played, but sometimes between the white noise, I'd catch fragments of music and wonder what the world sounded like now. The Hutchins boy? Oh, he's at a special facility upstate. I once heard her tell someone through the ventilation grate. Poor thing. Mental problems after his parents died. We visit when we can, but the doctors say it might be years before he's stable enough for home visits. We're just praying for a miracle. The neighbors must have bought it completely, because sometimes I'd hear them praise Vera for her sacrifice. "You're a saint, taking on that burden," Mrs. Chen from next door once said. Most people would have just let the state handle it. "Family is family," Vera had replied. "Even if he's not blood, I made a promise to his father. I'll take care of Dustin for as long as necessary." She even showed me fake letters from this facility where I was supposedly living. Clearwater Psychiatric Institute for Troubled Youth, the letterhead read. The letters described my progress in terms that sounded hopeless. Patient continues to exhibit violent tendencies, medication adjustments ongoing, family visitation not recommended at this time. Each letter was signed by different doctors, their signatures barely legible scrawls that could have said anything. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? She was the only person I'd seen in 12 years. She controlled my food, my water, my toilet paper, my everything. When she said I'd attacked the mailman during one of my blackouts, I apologized for something I couldn't remember. When she said the neighborhood had petitioned to have me removed after I'd supposedly killed someone's dog, I cried for an animal I'd never met. The basement became my entire world, 20 feet by 15 feet of concrete and shadows. The walls were painted gray, though the paint had long since started peeling in sheets that looked like dead skin. I did push-ups to stay sane, traced patterns in the dust, and talked to myself just to hear a human voice. I created imaginary friends from the authors of my textbooks. Mr. Harrison, who wrote about biology, became my science teacher. Mrs. Franklin, who authored the history book, became my confidant. They were the only stable relationships I had. Some days I wondered if maybe I really was dangerous. Maybe those blackouts she described were real, and I just couldn't remember them. Vera would show me scratches on her arms, bruises on her neck, and say, "You did this last night, Dustin. You don't remember trying to strangle me? This is why you need to stay down here. Imagine if you did this to a child." The guilt was crushing. I'd stare at my hands for hours, wondering what they were capable of, what monster lived inside me that only came out in the darkness of my forgotten moments. I started to fear myself more than I feared the basement. At least the basement walls couldn't hurt anyone. At least the concrete and shadows kept the world safe from whatever I became during those blackouts. This was my reality for 12 years. 4,380 days of believing I was too dangerous to deserve sunlight, too broken to have human contact, too damaged to ever dream of freedom. But the truth was far worse than any mental illness could ever be. Everything changed the morning of my 18th birthday. Vera came down with her usual tray of food, but something was different. She was nervous, checking her watch repeatedly, and her hands shook as she set down the metal tray. The beans were cold as always, but today she'd added a small cupcake with a single candle, unlit. "Listen carefully, Dustin," she said, setting down the tray harder than usual. The metal clang echoed off the concrete walls. "There are going to be some changes. You're 18 now, which means certain legal things shift. I've arranged for you to be transferred to a permanent facility next week." "Permanent?" My voice cracked. I barely used it except to answer her basic questions. The word felt like a death sentence. "It's for the best. You'll have doctors, medication, proper care." She wouldn't meet my eyes, instead staring at a spot just above my head. "The van comes Tuesday morning. Don't make this difficult." "But you said I was getting better. Last month you said the episodes were less frequent." My hands started to shake. 12 years in this basement suddenly felt like paradise compared to whatever institution she was planning. "I lied to spare your feelings. You're getting worse, Dustin. Last week you somehow got out and attacked Mr. Patterson's son. The boy needed 15 stitches. The only reason you're not in jail is because I convinced them you're mentally incompetent." "Mr. Patterson's son?" I could hear kids playing basketball next door just yesterday. They sounded fine, laughing and arguing about scores. But doubt crept in like it always did. Maybe they had another son. Maybe I really had hurt someone. After she left, panic consumed me. A permanent facility meant no hope of ever getting better, of ever living a normal life. It meant stronger locks, real doctors who might see through whatever was wrong with me, medications that would fog my brain until I couldn't even read my books anymore. But worse, something in her voice told me this wasn't about helping me. There was an eagerness there, a relief, like she was finally getting rid of a burden. That night, I heard her on the phone through the ventilation grate. She must have thought I was asleep, or maybe she just didn't care anymore since I'd be gone in 4 days. Her voice carried down through the vents clearer than usual. "Yes, Tuesday morning. He doesn't suspect anything. Once he's committed with the paperwork I've prepared, the monthly checks from the trust continue coming to me as his permanent guardian. The psychiatric evaluation I had Dr. Brennan forge 12 years ago will hold up. Dr. Brennan, forge, trust, monthly checks. The words spiraled in my mind like a tornado, ripping apart everything I thought I knew. I pressed my ear against the vent, my heart pounding so hard I was afraid she'd hear it upstairs. $20,000 a month for 12 years, Roger. Do you know what I've sacrificed, keeping that boy locked up? But his mother's estate was worth it. Another 40 years of payments once he's institutionalized, and I'm set for life. My mother's estate? But she died when I was 6, with my father, didn't she? My head spun trying to piece together fragments of memory from before the basement. I remembered my mother's laugh, the way she smelled like vanilla, how she used to read to me every night. But Vera said she died instantly in the crash. The original will specify the money would go to Dustin at 18, Vera continued. But if he's mentally incompetent, I remain the trustee indefinitely. The beauty is, the law firm managing the trust thinks he's been dead for 12 years. They've been sending checks for his memorial charity that I set up. Once he's in the facility under a fake name, there's no way anyone connects him to the Calloway estate. Calloway estate. Memorial charity. Fake name. Each phrase hit me like a physical blow. I slumped against the wall, my legs too weak to hold me. Everything was a lie. Every single thing she'd told me for 12 years was a complete fabrication. What about the real psychiatric holds? The voice on the phone asked. I recognized it now as Roger, her boyfriend, who sometimes stayed over. I'd hear them laughing upstairs, drinking wine while I ate cold beans below their feet. Brennan will handle it. He's been writing fake evaluations for years. One more won't matter. The boy is so brainwashed he'll probably confirm whatever symptoms we tell him he has. Yesterday I told him he killed a dog, and he apologized for 20 minutes. They both laughed. The sound made bile rise in my throat. I'd cried for that dog. I'd had nightmares about hurting an innocent animal. I'd added it to my list of sins, the reasons I deserved to be locked away. The facility in Mexico will take him for $5,000 a month cash. No questions asked, no real medical care, just a bed and enough medication to keep him quiet. That leaves $15,000 profit monthly, plus what I've saved over the years. Roger, we can finally buy that beach house in Florida. That night I didn't sleep. Every story Vera told me unraveled. Every symptom she described, every blackout she swore I had, every reason she kept me locked away. All lies. The rage that built inside me wasn't mental illness, it was clarity, pure, sharp, crystalline clarity that cut through 12 years of manipulation. For 12 years, I'd been a prisoner, not a patient. For 12 years, I'd apologized for crimes I never committed. For 12 years, I'd believed I was a monster when the real monster was sleeping soundly in the master bedroom above me, dreaming of beach houses bought with my mother's money. I had 3 days to escape, or I'd disappear forever into some Mexican facility where no one would even know my real name. 3 days to save my own life. I had 3 days until Tuesday. 3 days to escape from a basement that had held me for 12 years. But this time, I had something I'd never had before. Determination born from truth. And rage that burned away 12 years of learned helplessness. The basement door was solid wood with a deadbolt that locked from the outside. But 12 years of staring at the same 4 walls meant I knew every weakness. The hinges were old, painted over dozens of times. The frame had water damage from an old leak, making the wood soft in one corner. I'd noticed it years ago, but never thought to exploit it because I believed I deserved to be locked up. Now, that same damage looked like salvation. Saturday passed with me testing every possible weakness. I tried the window first, using a fork to scrape at the black paint, but immediately realized it was barred from the outside. The ventilation grate was too small even for my malnourished frame. The door remained my only option. I spent hours studying it, running my fingers along the frame, finding the exact spot where the wood felt punky and soft. Sunday morning, Vera brought breakfast late. She was dressed for church, wearing the gold cross necklace she always wore when she wanted to look respectable. "You're being quiet," she observed, suspicious. Her eyes narrowed as she studied me. "Just scared about Tuesday," I mumbled, keeping my head down. I'd learned over the years that eye contact made her uncomfortable. "Will you visit me at the facility?" Her shoulders relaxed. "Of course, dear. Every month, just like a good mother should." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily I wondered if she even knew she was lying anymore. "Vera," I said, forcing my voice to crack. "I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, for all the people I've hurt. You've been so patient with me." She actually smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. "That's very mature of you, Dustin. The doctors at the facility will help you. Maybe someday you'll even get better." She left humming a hymn, completely convinced her plan was working. Sunday night, I waited until 2 a.m. when I knew she'd be deep in sleep. She took sleeping pills every night, another fact I'd gathered from years of listening through the vents. Using the fork I'd hidden months ago, just to have something that was mine, I spent hours scraping at the rotted wood around the door frame. The soft wood came away in strips, silent and damp. My fingers bled from splinters and raw pressure, but I kept going. By 3 a.m. Monday morning, I'd loosened the frame enough to see the deadbolt mounting. The screws were old, rusty, and the wood around them was destroyed. I grabbed the door handle and pulled with every ounce of strength my underfed body could manage. The frame creaked, groaned, and then with a soft crack, the deadbolt mounting pulled free from the rotted wood. I pushed the door open for the first time in 12 years. The basement stairs looked impossibly steep. My legs, weak from years of limited movement, trembled with each step. The 7th stair creaked loudly, and I froze for a full minute, listening for any sign that Vera had woken. Nothing. Just the ticking of a grandfather clock I'd forgotten existed. The house was dark, silent, and completely foreign. The kitchen had been remodeled into something modern and expensive, all granite countertops and stainless steel appliances bought with my mother's money. Family photos lined the hallway, but I wasn't in any of them. Instead, Vera posed with Roger at various vacations. Beaches, mountains, cruises, all funded by my imprisonment. I found Vera's office easily because she'd mentioned it during her phone call. The door was unlocked, her confidence in my imprisonment making her careless. The desk was covered in papers, and what I found made my stomach turn. Bank statements showing automatic deposits of $20,000 monthly from Helena Calloway Trust. My mother's name was Helena. I remembered that now, remembered how she used to write it in cursive on my lunch bags. Photos of my parents I'd never seen were stuffed in a drawer. My mother holding me as a baby, my father teaching me to ride a bike, all three of us at a beach I couldn't remember visiting. We looked so happy, so normal, so far from the narrative of mental illness Vera had created. The folder labeled Dustin Commitment Papers contained forged psychiatric evaluations dating back 12 years. Dr. Brennan's signature appeared on documents describing violent episodes that never happened, medications I'd never taken, symptoms I'd never exhibited. Each forgery was another bar in my cage, but the document that stopped my heart was at the bottom of the pile. Missing person case, SURE 2012-4478, Dustin Calloway, age 6. Case closed, presumed dead. Presumed dead, the world thought I was dead. My mother's family, if any existed, thought I was dead. The lawyers managing my trust thought I was dead. I'd been erased from existence while living 20 feet below ground. I grabbed the most important documents, shoving them into a plastic bag I found in a drawer. Bank statements, the missing person report, the forged medical records, and a photo of my parents. Evidence of my existence and her crimes. Then I saw Vera's wallet on the counter. I took the $60 inside, the first money I'd ever held. 3 $20 bills that felt like freedom. I needed clothes that didn't mark me as an escaped prisoner. In the laundry room, I found a donation bag Vera had prepared for Goodwill. Jeans that were too big, a flannel shirt that smelled like Roger's cologne, and a baseball cap that would hide my face. I changed quickly, stuffing my basement clothes in the trash. Standing at the back door, I hesitated. 12 years of conditioning told me I was dangerous, that I'd hurt someone the moment I stepped outside. But that was Vera's voice, not mine. I turned the doorknob and stepped into the night air for the first time since I was 6 years old. The world smelled different than I remembered. Fresher, bigger, free. The outside world was overwhelming. Streetlights burned my eyes like small suns. Cars moved faster than I remembered, their headlights cutting through darkness with an intensity that made me flinch. I walked for miles, no idea where I was going, just knowing I needed to get far from that house. My legs ached and trembled, unused to walking more than 20 feet in any direction. By sunrise, I found myself in downtown Portland, a city I didn't even know I lived in. A help wanted sign at Ridgeway Corporate Building caught my eye. Janitor position, immediate start. The universe seemed to be offering me a lifeline. I walked in, probably looking like a ghost with my pale skin and ill-fitting clothes from Vera's donation bag. The building manager, Mr. Torres, barely looked up from his newspaper. "You 18?" he asked, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes. "Yes, sir." "Can you start today?" "Yes, sir." "Fine. Minimum wage, night shift. Don't steal anything. Uniforms in the supply closet, building keys are numbered. You mess up, you're gone." For 2 weeks, I cleaned offices from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. I slept in a storage closet on the 3rd floor, showered in the employee bathroom before anyone arrived, and saved every penny of my cash wages. Nobody asked questions about the quiet janitor who flinched at sudden noises and didn't know how to use a smartphone. Mr. Torres paid me in cash at my request, probably thinking I was dodging taxes or child support. He didn't care as long as the offices were clean. I learned the building's rhythm. Lawyers worked late on the 20th floor. Accountants left by 6 on the 10th. The marketing company on the 15th sometimes had parties that left conference rooms trashed with wine stains and catered food I'd secretly eat after they left. Every night I'd pocket leftover sandwiches and fruit, supplementing the dollar menu items I could afford. Then came the night that changed everything. October 15th, a Thursday. I was cleaning the 20th floor, the executive level of Ridgeway Law Firm. The name had meant nothing to me when I first saw it. Just another company in a building full of companies. Usually, it was empty by the time I got there, but tonight, light spilled from under the main conference room door. Partners sometimes worked late on big cases, so I knocked gently, then entered with my cleaning cart. "Sorry, I'll come back later," I mumbled to the older man sitting at the conference table, surrounded by papers and manila folders. The man looked up, and his coffee mug crashed to the floor. The sound of ceramic shattering on marble seemed to echo forever. His face went white as marble, then gray, like he was watching a ghost materialize before his eyes. "No, no, this isn't possible." His voice was barely a whisper. He stood slowly, gripping the table for support. I stepped back, frightened. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll clean that up right away." I grabbed paper towels from my cart, dropping to my knees to collect the broken pieces. "Your face, your eyes." He moved around the table, his expensive shoes crunching on ceramic shards. "You're supposed to be dead. Helena swore you died in that crash with your father." Helena, my mother's name. I froze, a piece of broken mug cutting into my palm. "You knew my mother?" The man, who I could now see wore a name tag from some earlier meeting reading Harrison Ridgeway, senior partner, sank into the nearest chair like his legs had given out. "Knew her? She hired us 20 years ago to set up your trust. When you were born, she was terrified something might happen to her. She had a heart condition, knew she might not see you grow up, so she set up a $20 million trust for you. $20 million? The room spun. I gripped my cleaning cart to stay upright. But after the accident, your stepmother showed us death certificates, yours and your parents'. The trust instructions were clear. If you died, the money would go to your guardian for charitable work in your memory. We've been sending her $20,000 monthly for 12 years. She locked me in a basement, I whispered. For 12 years, she kept me in a basement. Mr. Ridgway's face went from white to red, the color of rage rising from his collar to his hairline. Show me your arms. Confused, I rolled up my sleeves. The scars from years of scratching at concrete walls, the pale skin that hadn't seen sunlight, the marks from trying to escape. They told their own story. My skin looked almost translucent under the conference room lights, blue veins visible like a roadmap of captivity. My God, he grabbed his phone with shaking hands. Patricia, cancel my evening, then call Detective Morrison and tell him to get here immediately, and bring up the Helena Calloway trust files. All of them. He paused, his voice breaking. Yes, I said, Calloway. Helena Calloway's son is alive. He turned to me, tears streaming down his weathered face. Your mother was my best friend's daughter, Dustin. When she died, I promised at her funeral I'd make sure her son was taken care of. I failed her. I failed you. But I swear to you now, that woman will pay for every single day she stole from you. I don't understand. The death certificates? Forged, they had to be. Your mother set up a provision. If you were ever declared dead without a body, we were supposed to hire private investigators to confirm. But your stepmother provided certificates, a funeral program, even photos of a gravestone with your name. We had no reason to doubt her. He pulled out a tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. Here, this is your mother's file. He showed me a photo of a young woman with my exact eyes, my same dark hair. She was brilliant, Harvard Law at 21. She knew something might happen, that's why she protected your assets so carefully. Except she never imagined someone would just make you disappear while keeping you alive. Detective Morrison arrived within an hour, followed by FBI agents. Kidnapping and fraud across state lines made it federal. They took my statement in that same conference room where I'd been mopping floors an hour earlier. Mr. Ridgway never left my side, his hand on my shoulder like an anchor. We need to move now, Detective Morrison said after hearing my story. If she realizes he's gone, she'll run. By 3 a.m., they had arrested Vera at the house where she was already packing to leave. She'd discovered my escape and was loading suitcases into her car when the FBI surrounded her. They found Roger trying to burn documents in the backyard. The basement still smelled like my 12 years of captivity, and forensics would later find DNA evidence. Scratches in the concrete where I'd marked days, years of proof that I'd been there. The trial was a media sensation. The basement boy, they called me, though Harrison, as he insists I call him now, kept my real name out of the papers through careful legal maneuvering. Vera got 40 years for kidnapping, fraud, and false imprisonment. The judge called it one of the most calculated and cruel cases of child abuse he'd ever seen. Dr. Brennan, who'd forged my psychiatric evaluations, lost his license and got 15 years. Roger got 10 years as an accomplice. They found evidence he'd been planning to kill me if the Mexico facility plan fell through. But the real aftermath was quieter than headlines. Harrison personally oversaw my case. The trust my mother left wasn't just $20 million. With proper investment over 18 years, it had grown to $32 million. But money couldn't buy back 12 years of childhood, of education, of learning how to be human. Harrison knew that. He'd sit with me during therapy sessions, teaching me things fathers should teach sons. How to shake hands firmly. How to look people in the eye. How to trust that not everyone was lying. Your mother was brilliant, Harrison told me one day, showing me photos I'd never seen. She graduated Harvard Law at 23. She clerked for a Supreme Court justice. She would be so proud that you survived. He showed me videos of her holding me as a baby, teaching me to walk, reading me stories. Her voice was exactly as I'd remembered it in my dreams. I enrolled in an accelerated education program. Turns out, teaching yourself from old textbooks in a basement makes you pretty good at self-directed learning. Within a year, I had my GED. Within 2, I was enrolled in college studying law, following my mother's footsteps. Harrison became my mentor, teaching me not just about law, but about life. He introduced me to his family, who embraced me like I'd always belonged at their dinner table. But the hardest lesson wasn't academic. It was learning to trust, to believe that not everyone who smiled at me was lying. My therapist, Dr. Chen, says I'm making remarkable progress, but some nights I still wake up thinking I'm back in that basement, that my freedom is the dream. She taught me that trauma doesn't disappear, you just learn to carry it differently. I bought a small apartment with windows everywhere. The kitchen has 3 windows. The bathroom has a skylight. My bedroom has floor-to-ceiling glass facing east, so I wake up with sunrise every single morning. Sometimes I just stand at them, watching people walk by, still amazed I'm allowed to be part of the world. My neighbors think I'm weird for leaving all my curtains open, but they don't understand that privacy feels like imprisonment to someone who lived in shadows for 12 years. Last week, I got a letter that changed everything again. It was from a woman named Teresa, my mother's sister. She'd thought I was dead for 12 years, had even spoken at my supposed funeral. She wanted to meet, to tell me stories about my mother, to show me videos of family I never knew existed. We met at a coffee shop, and she held my hands and cried for an hour before she could speak. "You have her eyes," she said, "and her strength. Helena would be so proud that you survived." She introduced me to cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents who'd mourned me for over a decade. They welcomed me with a fierce love that overwhelmed and healed me simultaneously. Suddenly, I had a family, real family, who wanted nothing from me but to know me. Family isn't always blood, Harrison had told me. Sometimes it's the people who refuse to give up on you, even when they think you're gone. I started a foundation with part of my trust. It's called Hidden Children, and it helps identify missing children who might not actually be missing, just hidden. We've found 17 kids in the past year, locked in basements, attics, sheds, hidden in plain sight by people who were supposed to protect them. Because if 12 years taught me anything, it's that monsters don't lurk in basements. They're the ones holding the keys. Vera was right about one thing, though. I did have episodes where I blacked out. Every night in that basement, I'd black out the pain, the loneliness, the despair. But those weren't symptoms of mental illness. They were symptoms of survival. And I survived. Sometimes people ask me if I forgive Vera. The answer is no. Forgiveness is for mistakes, for human error, for moments of weakness. What she did was calculated evil sustained over 12 years. I don't forgive her, but I don't let her own any more of my life either. She already took 12 years. She doesn't get to take another day through my anger. My story isn't unique. Right now, somewhere, a child is being told they're dangerous, mentally ill, unwanted, or dead to the world. They're being hidden by someone who should protect them. If you suspect something, say something. Don't assume someone else will help. Don't assume the parents know best. Sometimes the real parent is the one who locked you away. I'm 21 now, I'm in law school, I have a girlfriend who knows my whole story and loves me anyway. I have a family who found me after thinking I was dead. I have a life that Vera tried to steal but couldn't quite kill. And every morning, when sunlight streams through my windows, I remember that basements are only permanent if you never find the courage to test the door. If this story touched you, please share it with others who need to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of survival and triumph. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light and might just save someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that escape exists, and that sometimes the truth really does set you free.